So hi, everyone out there, and welcome to our session on accelerated development, the art of acceleration, and how we've used frameworks and accelerators to really help our clients to go quickly. So thank you, all of you that have joined. Just a quick introduction. It's myself, Liesel, and Striker on the call. I'm the business development person, Striker's the techie, so you know who to ask what question. We thought it would be best, seen as you've been looking at a whole ton of faces today, to go through some slides, and so I'll share those with you, but feel free to interact, hop on the chat, ask us questions as you go. We're going to do a little bit of an introduction into how really to get this kind of patterned development going, and then Striker will really sort of lift the hood and talk about some of the tech that we've used within BBD to make this happen. So let me just introduce BBD to you. So who are we? We're a global software development company. We have 800 engineers across the world, from India, London, the Netherlands, and South Africa and Bulgaria. And what we do is really help our clients to facilitate all of their software needs. Mostly the stuff that's kind of in the background, so the non-sexy stuff, the stuff that's behind the scenes. Like, I hate my picture, but yeah, this is us. We're the guys behind the scenes doing some of the engineering, heavy lifting. And really, just to kick off, when we talk about what is it that we do, we first have to go back to what do we really need in our lives. And convergence really is life evolved today. So if we think about what our smartphones have done in our life, taking probably 10 or 15 gadgets and converging them into one place that makes a very seamless experience for us, this is really what we are needing in our business lives as well. And oftentimes in our business, we don't have the same convergence. In theory, our human resources, procurement, finance, call center should all be able to talk to one another. But in some of our clients and in some of our businesses, they really just don't. And if we did have an integrated business, we would have all of these things. We would have reduced costs, we would have efficiency, we would have competitive advantage, and our architecture would be optimized. But we know this is definitely not the case. And the reason we know this is not the case is because we speak to our clients. These are the things that they tell us keep them up at night. These are the things they're worrying about. These are the things they wish they could make happen. And so we know these hallmarks do not exist in a lot of those spaces. And so what generally happens, and many of you will have seen this happen in practice, is three kind of solutions pop into people's heads. Just let's rip it all out and replace it. And oftentimes they go, let's just build something ourselves. And anyone that's tried to do this will know just how often that doesn't go according to plan at all. The second is we just don't have the budget. So let's kind of just try and sticky tape something together and try and make it work in the background. And of course, the third is, no, let's just buy something off the shelf. And often when we buy something off the shelf, we get stuck into something that works super well for one part of our organization and really doesn't work at all for the rest of it. And yet we've got no way of getting out because we're totally tied in and we're hooked in from an architectural perspective. And so off-the-shelf solutions often just aren't optimal. And I guess there are many of you nodding your heads out there, or maybe not, that off-the-shelf solutions maybe aren't optimal. But I do believe that off-the-shelf processes can be optimal, and the reason I believe that is because most of our clients are the same. Well, 70% the same. Actually, I just made up that 72% number. But the point of the matter is, although most of our clients and although most businesses are totally not the same, they have different clients and different products and different services, and they're in different markets. The way we do things, the way things happen, it often really is the same. Most of what we need to achieve our business goals are very similar. And what we've learned from a technical perspective over 35 years of doing this is that because they are so similar, we can help you go faster because we've seen it happen so many times. And what we've done and what accelerated development really is about when we're talking about accelerators is how do we create those patterns or those building blocks that allow us to do these similar things on a repeated basis, but still allow us to be flexible in the specific solution that we're in at the moment. So the things that are the same really is we all need workflow, which essentially is just automation. We need one process to kick off another process, to kick off another process. Similarly, we need something that seamlessly orchestrates. The orchestration being the way our systems speak to one another, or external parties, or external service providers, or data sources. And we need that to flow through the processes seamlessly. And while these two processes are happening, the automation and orchestration, we need to be able to follow our clients seamlessly through the entire process, which is just case management. And so this is what we do. This is what we've identified. We also realize that most clients, when they go shopping, don't really need change. What they really want is to do what they've already done, but their systems aren't allowing them to. And what they really want is a way to maximize what their systems do, but they end up having to shop for change. And so what we're suggesting is there's probably a fourth option to those three that I presented before. And that really is that we can do this thing called accelerated modernization, which is creating a framework or a way of work or a set of tools or accelerators, an engine, if you like, that does the things that need to be done in a way that can be customized in any of our clients. So allows you to do workflow and orchestration and case management in a well-created framework, but within a very flexible solution inside your very particular example. And so what we've been creating over the years is exactly that, is this pattern framework set of solutions or building blocks that allow us to integrate systems in a way that is seamless, digitized, and customizable for various business contexts. And the reason we know that it makes sense is because we've done it over and over and over. And because all of our clients ask us these similar questions. And it's when we hear things like these things that we know that our clients would need an accelerator. We know that they would need our solution. We know that they need something that is the same as what other clients have needed. So it's these things like speed that your clients are looking for that your product delivery cannot meet, or just a systems architecture and that's like a bunch of spaghetti, people would say, or disparate systems that are not agile, or even in a more modern sense, building a solution using a whole lot of new technologies, but not having a way of linking them seamlessly to one another, which is the orchestration that I spoke about earlier. And so I'm going to hand over to Striker, and he's going to tell you just a little bit about what that really means in practice and how we've managed to do this in some of our settings or some of our business contexts.
Can you hear me? Hope
Yeah.
I'm muted. All right, I'm going to look at three of these examples, across industry applications. And, back to Liesel's point, what we emphasize here is that generally all of these clients typically have the same problems to solve, and referring to this exact pattern. Let me talk through them, and then we'll get into more detail. So let's look at retail and digital banks. We very recently harnessed these accelerators to implement a fully integrated call center servicing solution at a new behavioral bank. The primary challenge this bank faced was the rigid nature of some of the off-the-shelf products that they invested in. They very quickly realized that, for lack of a better word, they need some kind of glue between these rigid systems, to bring them together ultimately. Our workflow orchestration and UI core frameworks, was used to integrate into the existing Genesis telephony stack, as well as into a SAP banking platform, amongst other auxiliary systems. This allowed us to collate information from these disparate systems into a single client servicing UI to enable, effective client servicing experience. In addition, the workflow engine was also used to allow for sort of an omni-channel approach between the client mobile application, web, as well as the internal operations UI. So, moving of data between the client interaction right through, to operations seamlessly, and with the workflow can be picked up, at different steps. the first phase of the solution was delivered in a record-breaking 2 months, fully functional in production. Of course, it took about 3 months to implement the remaining integration points. I'm going to move over to another example in revenue services. Again, the same framework and patterns we used to successfully modernize revenue services as well. It's a similar architectural approach with operational workflows, your typical call center telephony, and integration into core legacy mainframe systems in this instance. The system is currently used by approximately 13,000 users across multiple branches and central operations. Again, the key problem we solved here was to allow for modernization without risk or disruption to the existing operations or legacy systems. Among other metrics, the modernization improved the tax return filing process and refunds from plus 100 days to a mere 2 days. All right, so, and again, another example, the Homeland and Immigration's offices and border control. As you can imagine, some of these systems are quite legacy, and there's a lot of disparate systems that needed integration. Another modernization initiative focused on improvement on border security and streamlining citizen and foreign application processes. I must again emphasize on the fact that we were dealing with high legacy system presence here. Multiple disparate systems across the entire organization, ranging from population registers, APHIS, from a biometrics perspective, border management, and right through to, managing the courier systems in delivering passports and identification documents. It's obviously a lot more involved than just that, but that's the point though. So just some general comments now around the pattern that emerges here. As per Liesel's previous comments, it's very clear that there's a common trend and pattern that emerges among these very different industries. And the pattern that emerged is exactly where we spent a great many years identifying what could be, built out of the box as accelerators versus what should be left for customization, per client requirement specification. In many of these clients, we found, like I've mentioned before, they typically opt in for, the off-the-shelf products, but these off-the-shelf products are very rigid and seldom can be customized. And that's where we try to find the balance between, producing a product versus, something that's close enough to help accelerate, but it's also flexible and then can be integrated into whatever the requirement is at the time. Okay, Liesel, you can move to the what can be achieved. These are just some of the metrics that is very visible with regards to some of the systems we implemented. I'm not going to talk through those. I mean, it's in the slide. Something to note, though, again, as I've said, the 3-month implementation of a digital bank, and then of course a very interesting number there as well as 146K cases being processed in revenue services. All right, I'm going to move on to the elements of acceleration framework. Next slide. Thank you, Liesel.
Sorry,
okay.
I thought perhaps you had lost me there. Let me.
That's okay. I don't see it presenting anymore, though.
There we go. You see it now?
Not yet.
Not?
No, but I guess I'll continue talking about it anyway. So once you have it up and running, it's fine. So we use a combination of Vanguard software frameworks and process methodologies to accelerate the implementation and modernization in enterprise businesses. That Liesel's going to show now. The point we're trying to make here is that any tooling or software framework needs to have the auxiliary processes and IP to allow to build enterprise solutions in record time, essentially. Although Vanguard is a full stack software solution, the Vanguard components can be implemented independently depending on specific requirements or problems. So you don't have to use the entire stack workflow case management orchestration. You could use the UI only, you could use the workflow capability. And we've come to see that in many of our clients, it is sometimes the case. For example, we have some clients running some workflows in parallel, and we've successfully integrated this workflow with theirs as well. Or you could have the UI on top of existing systems that they're running. All right. So another important aspect is that we typically don't promote the rip and replace approach. We rather like to modernize without risk, and perhaps over time, we could apply, a strangle principle, to replace the older legacy systems. We find that in most of our clients. Of course, you can use the entire stack in a Greenfields project as well. Okay, and then I'm going to touch briefly on the technologies used inside of Vanguard, but by all means, I think when we have some time later, we can have a further discussion around the technologies and if there's any questions around it. Excuse me. We picked these technologies based on sort of best of breed approach and very much around how flexible these technologies are in practice. There's always, I love Java and I love Python or whatever, but we found, the technologies we picked here, typically work for us. For example, Angular, as we well know, it's a go-to these days. We use a combination of Angular and Cordova, to allow for rich cross-platform UIs. But that being said, we also have a .NET version of this, UI that could be used as a thick client as well. But I think most people would opt in for the web approach. Of course, Vanguard is OpenID compliant and adopts Open API specifications. Then, onwards to the backend and services layer, we found that Python as a core servicing and orchestration layer was the best fit for rapid software development. Although that being said, we also support Vanguard as a Java implementation, specifically focused on asynchronous messaging, following your typical end-service bus principles. And then, of course, what is a system these days without cloud native and microservices approach? So we definitely take that to heart. Liesl, I think that is me from a tech perspective, but I'll definitely willing to answer some questions. I'd love to interact with some of the people if possible. Is there anyone that want to join at this point in time?
While folks are deciding if they're brave enough to come and get on a chat, we've got slide, and then we really want to get into conversation with you all.
Yeah, please let us know on the chat and we'll add you.
Yeah, I think just to finish it off, if you get this right, so if we have the pain points that I described in the beginning, we apply the most appropriate solution, one that's flexible but also has some critical elements to make it fast enough, the acceleration that Strife has been talking about. These are the outcomes that we generally see, and these are the outcomes that a lot of our clients ask for right in the beginning. So the outcomes are things like cost saving, and that cost saving just comes from the flexibility of the platform, the seamless interaction, single view front end. All of these make it human, and the human touch is something that's becoming increasingly important in our lives today, especially coming out of this crazy COVID situation that we find ourselves in. Increasingly, we need our digital solutions to feel very human, very intuitive. And this really allows us to be, because it's so intuitive, it has a very human feel, and it allows for personal service, a consistent feel, and a very holistic view. Also, because of the flexibility that Strifer has explained, it's very reusable. So a lot of the artifacts allow you to build once, or build once and then use many. It's completely customizable. And as we've explained, it's totally production grade. So it means that the technology itself is longer lasting without us having to stay in the client for a very long time. We can lay this down with their internal teams, assist them. And what generally happens in all of our clients is, although we call it Vanguard, the name that this pattern, this accelerator gets once it's been laid down in the client is very different. So it has a new name wherever it lands up, and it becomes very inherent to the way that they do work. It becomes their own core way of working with its own total identity. So that's really it from us in terms of the art of acceleration. And we'd love some of you now to go ahead and pop in with some questions that we can answer, and maybe you've got some issues that you'd like us to discuss. So yeah, go ahead. Yeah, if you want, you can just click ask to share audio and video, and you can join the room.
There's a couple in the queue. I just want to confirm if any of them want us to add.
Yeah, shall I just go ahead and click them on in?
I don't know. Maybe they're not ready.
I will click on anyone that's in the queue.
Maybe not.
But anyone else, if you've got questions, we'd love to hear what they are. If not, come and join our booth. We've created a recording of our demo that we can share with you and show you really what it looks like. That's what the actual physical manifestation of Vanguard looks like. And we can also just have a chat around how this would look in your organization, even if you're not using us as a provider, but how you would like to do a similar pattern of development. We'd love to chat and share ideas with you all as well. Yeah, you're seeing a link come through on how to join. There's a question, Striker, how would you say the Vanguard offering fits in the open banking space?
Yeah, that's an interesting question, because I actually thought that question would come up earlier. Typically as an enabler for open banking, primarily. Zoran, do you want to join and perhaps continue the discussion? More than welcome.
No? Want to just answer?
Not sure if I'll answer this question.
Any other questions from out there?
Hello.
I see Matthew has joined. Hello, Matthew.
I just had a question around getting teams started. How long does it, if we start using the framework, how long does it actually take to get a team up and running? And the second part would be, what type of skills would you need in the team? Does it have to be a highly skilled team, or what's the mix of the team look like? So really the question around is, you talk about speed, but actually how quickly does it take a team to get up and running? And, like if you were doing a demo, how quickly would that be able to get a demo up and running with a brand new team?
So if let's say, for example, we do a POC, as an example, we'd be able to get a POC up and running within a week's time, depending on the complexities. Full-blown initiation of a project, again, that's a very interesting question, Matthew. It depends on the situation, but the software stack itself is not it's not a complex approach. It's typical, your message-based, normal workflow processes, and the languages used are very straightforward, and it's open. I guess I wouldn't be able to give you an exact timeline. Our typical approach would be to partner with one of these clients and involve their developers as part of the initiative.
And what sort of skills would you look for if we're putting developers into the project? What type of skills and experience would you look for in the first 5 guys on a project?
Yeah, obviously, would prefer to have sort of some cloud native skills, but from a development language perspective, Python primarily and Angular, it's quite straightforward, and it's probably one of the most used languages. Well, both of them are. So yeah, depending on which platform we go with. If you take the Java version, then it would be the Java.
To answer your original question, Matthew, about how long and how much faster, we did just an example POC with vanilla onboarding for a bank that would generally have taken potentially 3 months to set up, and we managed to do that within 10 days. So it really is a whole lot quicker than if you were having to start right at the beginning to build from scratch, given that most of the tech is already available and most of the components have already been pre-built.
Yeah, okay, thanks. Are there any cloud platforms that you specifically run on, or is it can it run any cloud platforms?
Any. Depends on your choice. Yeah.
Yeah, the platform itself is totally cloud agnostic, database agnostic. The whole point of building an accelerator is to be able to be as flexible as possible. So the way it's been designed is to work with whatever our clients need.
Right. And you talk about integration into legacy systems. Can you tell me a bit about your way or your process that you use for integrating into back-end systems? What sort of thoughts do you have there, or what experience is required? What problems have you run into?
That's an interesting question. So short of sort of pre-designing adapters, out of the box, like for example, I guess you could go and build, SAP adapters out of the box. We try and avoid that typically because, as we've seen, there's each client has a very specific sort of legacy system or existing capability they need to integrate into. So we tried our best to build generic kind of, we call them nodes, that allows to rapidly integrate into any sort of kind of standard interfaces, whether or not that's SOAP or your open API approach, or whether or not that's message based. We typically find that we prefer sort of the message-based approach, and we typically like having some sort of message-based asynchronous broker in between, the Vanguard stack, and then of course, whatever systems are available. But it really doesn't matter. It depends on the issue at the time. We would definitely suggest a messaging layer in between.
So we have a question from Lucas. He says, as you mentioned, a lot of solutions, tools, and frameworks are already developed by your team at BBD. I was wondering how your pricing is structured. Are you charging new clients for the time and tools developed previously? Thanks. Yeah, great question, Lucas. No, we are not charging them for the tools and frameworks already developed by our team at BBD. We see this as our way of work. Obviously, with each client, we have to design the solution very specifically, and most of the work is really done in adapting it. We also don't sell this as a product, so it's not that you would buy Vanguard, you would come to BBD and we would solve our problem together. But this is how we get to be so quick, and we see it as one of our biggest value propositions, that we don't specifically charge for the product itself, but more for the solution that we come up with together.
And source code is open to the partners that we work with or clients. They're more than welcome to change it and adapt it as they see fit. That's typically the approach we take.
Yeah.
Some more questions.
Question from Liz. Has COVID-19 resulted in a boost in the urgency for digital transformation, and have you seen practical examples of this? Yes, absolutely. I mean, what we've seen from COVID is that some clients were kind of caught not being quick enough, not being as quick as they needed to be, given just some of the urgency that this new sort of digital world has brought us in this year. And so, yes, we have seen an urgency on one hand. Of course, on the other hand, we've seen other clients slowing down. One really practical example has been a POC that we did for actually tracking case patients and actually using Vanguard to track COVID cases, and it's perfect for that kind of a use case, exactly for the reason we described in border control or in revenue services, where you're calling multiple external services and external systems and having to track a client through. This is what Vanguard is so good at, and this is exactly why it was perfect for that solution.
That's actually a very good example for how rapidly we managed to get that process up and running to manage the COVID clients, and also send them off for testing purposes. If I'm not mistaken, it took us about a weekend worth of work, obviously 24/7, but we managed to deliver it quite quickly.
Yeah. And then there's a question from David. Is there a CDCI pipeline already? Would a new client need to build and run it?
I mean, there's obviously sort of out-of-the-box approaches you can take with this, and we can plug in with any existing predefined sort of CRC pipelines, or it could be customized. But yeah, again, we like to have that flexibility. There's the power in that.
Have you implemented a solution for any cloud-based system solution client to date?
Have you implemented? Well, the COVID-19 example was in fact cloud-based. Yep.
Yeah. I think
there's multiple others, but yes, we definitely have.
Yeah, it's very common for us to have cloud-based solutions, hence why we say we are cloud agnostic. What specific accelerators does Vanguard provide to address some of the typical pain points that new digital banks encounter and assist to reduce the time to market?
Sounds like one you can answer. Otherwise, I'll give it a bash. Go for it.
I have questions around this, like, are we only around for modernizing legacy systems? And that's definitely not the case, because when we are building a new digital bank, and we've just been building a new digital bank, by the way, oftentimes what we're looking to do is connect a whole lot of very new systems that have a very niche, piece of the business that they're addressing. And we have to link these very niche chunks of work together, and here again, Vanguard plays perfectly into this space in orchestrating how the system interacts with each of these. So yeah, that in this very digital bank example, the time to market was accelerated significantly. It was one of the examples on the slide that we provided. A weekend, that's incredibly fast for a POC. 35 years, it takes 35 years to be quick.
Yeah, maybe there's something while we wait for more questions. It's typically something that pops up a lot when we actually discuss, the accelerators in Vanguard. Is that, often we find clients asking, but, have you integrated into, do you have adapters out of the box that we can just land and configure in X amount of time? And that's not what we do. We typically, like we've said before, push the boundary to the point where, we still keep it flexible. So taking these little building blocks that we've built, enabling our developers to customize exactly to the need of the client. And of course, the building blocks we have discussed prior was very much, based on previous experience with most of our clients, in all industries. Yeah, of course, there is opportunity to go and build these adapters, but we typically try and, build it as we design the full architectural solution.
Once the tech is in place, how do you support the process or cultural change to support that?
Again, we typically try and partner with our clients. Usually there's a contingency of software developers and analysts already involved with some of these clients. We try and get them involved right from the get-go. So there's an understanding of, the patterns and the principles we apply with accelerators, and also a good understanding of the architecture. And slowly but surely, if all goes well, we could hand over the support and maintenance to the actual client. I'm not sure if I'm answering that question correctly. One second.
Yeah, I think it's pretty much that view. A lot of the way that we work in BBD is we believe that the culture that exists within our client is the culture. And so we do not profess to come in and change that. We like to work within the way they work. We like to work within their culture. And we most importantly like to work within their teams. And so a lot of what we do is really partnering on the ground teams to make sure that we don't build something with them that they are not able to support on their own. Although for some clients, we do provide ongoing support. For others, once we've laid down a process for them, they're able to run it on their own. And that's really important for us as a partner, that we fit into their way of work. We see that as one of our value propositions, in fact.
Absolutely.
Yeah, maybe Streicher, let's talk about some more examples. Let's talk about, are you able to build custom demos around a problem we might have? Of course we are.
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
We love doing that, Matthew.
We love doing that, Matthew, indeed. In fact, that's one of the things we really wanted to offer folks at this conference, was to say, if you have a question that sounds like something that can be solved with an accelerator, or sounds like something that one of our engineering solutions or engines can assist you build, then we'd happily come and do a POC with you all. And like Shrike has said, because we have a huge piece of this technology already in place, we can do POCs super quick, depending on what the value proposition is coming from the clients that are looking. But while we're waiting for more questions, let's dive into more of those examples, perhaps. So we spoke about some of them at a very high level, but maybe we should go into a little bit more. Kaiha, what do you think?
Sure, by all means.
So do you want to? Let's talk a little bit more about the digital banking one, about the new bank, and what we needed to do there, and how we went in and solved.
Yeah. So let me just. So well, where to start? I rambled off that whole little bit there. I mean, we already mentioned the rigid nature of some of the sort of off-the-shelf products that this bank bought upfront, not necessarily understanding what they get out of the box. And again, that's the primary issue that we solved for them after the fact. You know, they continued, you know, on this, you know, product approach, and realized it's just not going to cut it. They wouldn't be able to use some of the products, and I'm not going to mention some of the products out of SAP that would not necessarily solve the servicing issues. And that's when they typically reach out to us, and you know, we managed to glue these systems together. And you know, and there's quite a few, you know, SAP systems involved, you know, having information flow from their existing mobile application into, you know, the servicing application itself. And these orchestration and, you know, workflow frameworks we had just solved that problem quite easily. So, yeah, there's, I think, very importantly, issue that we solved there was the ability for them to seamlessly move between, you know, their client mobile application into sort of a call center aspect. So switching context between a client actually applying for, you know, or onboarding, you know, as a new client in the bank, going through the KYC processes, and, you know, potentially stepping out of those processes seamlessly into a operational aspect where some of the agents could assist live and assist these individuals to step through the process. And these steps and workflows were quite visible to, you know, the agents, and ultimately allowed them to service the client very effectively, having all of this information at hand. And I think that's one of, time and again, I see in all of these implementations where the real value comes in. Yeah. So any other comments there, Liesl?
Yeah, there's a couple more questions. One thing that just popped in my mind as you were talking there is just the range of partnerships that we generally work with. So we generally work with either the client themselves, but we're as comfortable working with a professional service provider like a consulting firm who have provided an option for a solution to a client, and we come in and do some of the heavy lifting in the background. And we're also as comfortable building bridges between some fintech solutions and incumbents. So we actually have, I think, a poll that just went up. So we'd love for any of you that are watching to go into the poll and just maybe share which of these issues are most relevant in your business. So is it a lack of common front end to consolidate data for multiple systems, or is it the need to integrate some complex vendor systems, or is it legacy that's not agile or flexible, or is it just an architecture that has way too many touch points, Or is it that your customers are really looking for change in speed and efficiency that can't be made? So it would be really interesting if some of you can go into that poll and let us see your thoughts. Some more questions are,
do you think there's any remaining regulatory uncertainty when outsourcing to the cloud, or is it a matter of education and understanding the benefits? Do you want to talk to that, Liesel?
No, I think outsourcing to the cloud really is something that a lot of organizations grapple with internally in their compliance departments, but it's our belief that it's really more of an internal fear than real in most cases, and we feel that the way we work certainly doesn't bring any more risk into the organization, nor does the fact that we use cloud. But if an organization feels that cloud is too risky, we're as happy being on-prem. Are you able to build custom demos around a problem? Yes, I've said we've answered that. Have you noticed that tech encourages positive change in the culture at traditional bank incumbents like agile, open standards for communication, microservices architecture?
Yes, absolutely. Specifically, open API discussion. Yep. And of course, I mean, we naturally apply the agile processes and open communication.
Yeah,
we would encourage that in our clients as well. So coming back to, I think, Zoran's previous question around, open banking, it's an enabler, again, for open banking and or open finance.
Yeah. And also a lot of the work that we do and the way that we work, we see it as sometimes starting just to get our clients on a new journey in how to be more agile, getting them on the journey into how to do DevOps maybe better, and even teaching that within their organizations.
Yeah, I see Sylvia Cotton asked a question about who would you see as your main competitors? That's always a question we get when we deal with some of our new clients as well, is that it's a difficult one to answer because we don't necessarily target a very specific sort of product per se. So I can't tell you, exactly which competitors we would have. We would compete with individual products in combination from an integration perspective. I guess, I mean, if you could go and, if you go into Amazon and AWS, you'd probably be able to put some building blocks together which would give you a similar sort of solution, but I would think there would be some challenges.
Yeah, we don't really see ourselves as the kind of organization that looks for competitors. We're more of an organization that looks for partnership. So if I turn that around, who would we see as our main partners? Well, almost everyone in the space. Even if we look at other custom software providers, we don't necessarily see them as competition either. Oftentimes we can work with other players in the same client, just doing a different thing. I think we have a very specific niche, like I said in the beginning with my beautiful picture of the guy on the beach. A lot of what we try and do is the non-sexy stuff, and that is really behind the scenes and not a niche that a lot of people would focus on. So maybe let's just hop over to that poll and see how it's looking. So the biggest number of votes so far are legacy systems that are not agile or flexible enough. And that's certainly what we see in our clients as well, that is that's a really big need. And this is when they come to those 4 questions, and hopefully we have an answer that's a little bit better than just ripping everything out and starting again.
Just having a look at the polls.
Yeah, and then there's another one. When deciding on software solutions, the most important consideration for your business. And there people are saying complete customization with flexible design.
That's interesting.
Yeah,
that's exactly, yeah. That's exactly where we're targeting Vanguard.
Yeah. Because to the point about, although clients have completely different products and completely different clients, and different markets. Actually, what they have in the way their processes work is very much the same. So this is what we give. We give the pieces that are exactly the same, and then allow the flexibility for the pieces that are completely different.
Did you talk to the additional poll around which of these issues are currently most relevant in your business? Legacy systems that are not agile and flexible. I think you did answer that, yeah.
Yeah, I did go to that one.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right.
Any other questions from everyone out there?
Anyone want to join for interactive discussion?
Yeah, we would love to have it.
Please.
And really engage on what Vanguard can do. Maybe I'll answer some of the questions that a lot of clients ask us, and that is it really that much faster? Like, how much faster is it to do this kind of thing in this kind of way? Well, it's an incredible amount faster. Like I said, for vanilla banking, we were able to do it in almost 5 times as quick. But it's bigger than just being fast or just comparing to how you would do this if you did it yourself. The point is, why would you do this yourself? It's not really about speed. It's a question of why would you start at the beginning doing something when a solution already exists, when a toolkit already exists, when it can be laid down in a super short amount of time. I think that's what it all boils down to is don't waste your time on things that you can get off the shelf. And a thing that we say to our clients is focus on the stuff that you're good at. Focus on your core business and let us focus on doing the stuff that's our core business that we've been making our niche for the last 35 years, which is exactly this. How do you do software really well?
Interesting. There's a 25% on demonstrate experience in our industry. Of course, I mean, we've briefly spoken about some of the industries we've been involved with, and we do have, IP across those. So that's a very important aspect. It's not just all about putting software down and solving the actual technical problems. So having a good understanding of a very simple example, onboarding, collections processes when it comes to banking, AML and KYC. We typically supplement that, with supplement the expertise when we do deliver Vanguard in these industries. It's critical.
Yeah. And in our industry, and I'd be fascinated to know what some of those industries are, but certainly from our perspective, we've played in everything from sports betting to cross-border to COVID to banks to insurance to revenue. So it's and healthcare. So again, this talks to the point about the industry specifics are fascinating and interesting, but at the end of the day, what you really need to do is connect your systems in a way that totally makes sense, and this is exactly what it's about. We also often have the question around why wouldn't we just use an open source workflow solution? Why would we want to use Vanguard? And it's a valid question, but the answer really is if you have a team that is available to do that, why are they doing that? And why are they not doing something else in your tech perspective? If you are going to focus resources on doing workflow, you have to ask yourself if that's the best use of them and the best use of your resources and headcount, rather than getting a solution that we can integrate into orchestration as well.
Yeah, agreed.
Mm.
Just to add on to that as well, we found, in fact, in one of our banking clients recently that they did exactly that. They went out and try to get sort of a best of breed of specific technologies, whether or not it is message processing. For example, they implemented Kafka. They used Docker Swarm internally on-prem. They used other sort of config-based services technologies that are open source, and ironically, all 3 of those have been removed out of the tech stack because, number one, expertise in understanding each of these was lacking, and yeah, ultimately getting the necessary support from it. I'm not saying that Kafka doesn't have its place, but it needs to have the right set of minds to implement it. And maybe back to one of the other questions is, who do we compete with? I would say that some of what some of the products we just mentioned, we do compete with in combination. And we typically see that you can't go and implement one of these things isolated. You need to have a full stack understanding from workflow orchestration right into integration. And that's I guess that comes with, experience, but we definitely give that kind of support. So yeah, sometimes challenging.
I think what's also interesting with this kind of a framework is that it feels as much at home in the back office or in operations as it feels inside finance and middle office functions, as it feels when it's in the call center or client facing, or even in the front end. And that's exactly where the case management comes into play, is that you can lay this kind of thing down anywhere in the organization, and it will be as comfortable. And because what we've created is flexible, the look and feel really is up to the clients. And so it looks totally different. As I mentioned, it's called something totally different and does a different job inside of all our clients, but still at its heart is Vanguard.
Yeah. Also, please, if you guys need to go and have a look at our, there's a vanilla demo that you can find in our LinkedIn page. It's actually, it shows the interaction between the mobile application and the omnichannel approach, to the operational services application as well, and the collation of information. It's actually quite informative as well. It'll give you a better understanding of what Vanguard's capable of doing. So we encourage you to please go and have a look at that as well.
Yeah.
Maybe to answer Katie's question there, how did Vanguard come about? That's, again, a very good question. Over 35 years, and I think we briefly touched on it as we went through the slides, we happened to see time and again, every single time because as a company, let me maybe start there. We typically focus on bespoke software development. And we would gather the requirements for the client, and we would then go and build the software from scratch. Over the years, we found that every single time we build these components, they all typically do the same thing. And over the years, we've built this kind of workflow and orchestration capability that we kept on reusing. And if that kind of answers the question around how Vanguard came about. And then she says, how do you assess whether Vanguard is the right for the client environment?
That goes back to those 5 questions, right? Yeah. So why would we think about Vanguard rather than some other type of architectural solution? Well, we'll always start with what's the problem? And our first questions will be around what really is the client wanting. We don't just have this Vanguard hammer that we're hoping to hit everything with. But if there is a spaghetti, so if we have this complex set of architectural mess sitting in the client, or we have legacy systems, or we have clients that really want to go way faster than systems can keep up with, or we have systems that just aren't flexible or agile enough to keep up with many changes. And often this is where the regulation comes in, just regulatory requirements just hitting you from all sides, and systems just not being flexible enough to keep up with these regulatory changes, or where you've got a whole lot of new solutions that you just can't seem to get to talk to each other. That's how we would assess that Vanguard is potentially the right solution. Because when those kind of factors come into play, that's when the dots get connected and we can go, aha, yeah, this feels like Vanguard, rather than this feels like BBD coming in and building you some other awesome solution just from scratch. But as to Striker's point, sometimes we don't need the full solution. Sometimes we just use pieces of it. And some clients, like in the gaming example, it was really just about orchestration. They didn't need the workflow as much. And in other clients, it will be more about workflow. And in others, it will be about case management. And sometimes the UI is more important than in others. So it all depends on the client need. Rian, if I would like a personalized demo to understand how BBD and Vanguard can assist in solving my specific business problems, what is the best channel to start such a discussion? Well, come to the booth and request a demo, or connect with any one of us today or on LinkedIn. And we would love to set up a call and potentially just hear exactly what your problems are. And assess what the best solution for you would be and how we would make that happen. Fortunately, we have quite wide global coverage. So we're in Africa, we're in Europe, we're in the Middle East, and we're in the Far East, and we're in even Eastern Europe. And so we're able to assist clients no matter where they are. And actually, that's been the one advantage of COVID. We realized we can help from wherever you are, because we're all at home anyway. It's been a huge advantage for us. But yeah, we do have folks that can assist wherever you are. And we'd love to. And actually, we would love to just get into a conversation, because we find that just getting into a conversation with folks, we may not be able to help you today, but certainly down the line, we may find a way to assist. Yeah, so I guess we're coming to the end and wrapping up, and it's been really fun having a chit-chat, Striker, and sharing some of these views with you all. There is another chat that will be on the main stage at Hoppers 4 if any of you want to join in there, and that conversation is so we built this, so how the BBD approach is different to when you're inside a fintech or when you're inside a bank. How does it feel when you're building this in all those different frames of reference? So we'll see you there at 4:30. But otherwise, thanks. It's been lovely interacting with all of you, and we'd love to chat more over a coffee, digitally, somehow.
Thank you very much. Thank you all.
Thank you all.